This week's episode of the Autoblog podcast is brought to you by the Autoblog Daily Digest. It's a great way to stay updated with what's happening in the world of cars in just 2 or 3 minutes every day. Ask your smart speaker for the Autoblog Daily Digest to stay up to speed with the latest car news, or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to the Autoblog podcast. I'm Greg Migliore. Joining me today is Consumer Editor Jeremy Korzeniewski. How you doing, man?
Not doing too bad. Thanks for asking. It's nearly 60 degrees outside in still March. Hard to complain.
This has been a very nice March. It seems like we are getting spring a little bit early, so that's kind of nice. It's technically winter, I think, for another 2 weeks, which means I think we will get some snow. This is the curse. We put the snow tires on our long-term TLX. I don't think it's snowed since. So a little bit of irony there, but so it goes. But we have a great show for you today. We're going to talk about, Jeremy's been driving the BMW M80i. This is the X-Drive convertible. So kind of a
M850.
850i.
Yeah, exactly.
Excuse me. It's one of the, pretty interesting thing here, an all-wheel drive convertible. There's a lot going on there, so that's kind of cool. Let's see. I've spent a little bit of time in the Volkswagen Tiguan. Very nice crossover. Then we'll run through some news. A lot of news items going on this week. We have a feature, a used car spotlight, and finally we'll spend some money. So let's jump right into the BMW. What did you do with this BMW?
I cruised around a bit. We haven't had a chance to talk about it, but I actually had it prior to any snowfall. So I didn't have to worry about snow tires or slippery traction or anything. But I mean, it is an all-wheel drive vehicle anyway. So if you're not super up on our, modern BMWs, the 8 Series was reintroduced, I think, for the 2019 model year. The 2020 and 21, no major upgrades, updates. They did introduce a Grand Coupe version, which is BMW speak for a 4-door sedan, but with a more coupe-like, fastback, sleek body style. The one that I had was the convertible top-up, super quiet, serene, luxurious driving experience, top-down. Still luxurious, but, feels a little bit sportier, kind of like you're in a smaller car than you're in. The interior is, it's tight, as you'd expect from a, sporting coupe or convertible. But it was a great car. It's really difficult to come up with anything negative to say about the M850. It's quick, it is fast, and by that I mean it accelerates quickly, and it has a very high top speed. Not that you really use any of that kind of thing in typical driving, but it's also extremely luxurious, and being a modern BMW, it's got all kinds of drive modes, so if you're kind of in the mood for a grand touring car, it fits that bill nicely. That's kind of like the niche that it sits in as a grand tourer. It's sportier when you ratchet through the drive modes. Things like the suspension, throttle response, transmission tuning can get pretty aggressive. It's a twin turbo V8. I've got specs pulled up here. Just 1 second while I grab them. The 850 is the twin turbocharged V8, which is what I had. It's 523 horsepower and 553 pound-feet of torque.
That's awesome. That's pretty good.
That's a lot. Does 0 to 60 in like 3.5 seconds, it says. So no shortage of power, no shortage of speed, but it's also can be very serene to drive. Like, you put everything in comfort mode, and just kind of sit back and chill. And it's a lovely car. It's a great car to cruise around in. Of course, it is expensive. Let's see, I've got pricing pulled up here. The 850 X-Drive convertible starts at $122,395. This being a German premium vehicle, the options add up extremely quickly, and you're probably looking at $145,000 with just a few decent options. You go crazy and just add everything, and you're well over 150 grand, which is a lot of money. If you want to save a little bit, you can get the 840i, which is also coupe or convertible. That one is a turbocharged inline six. The coupe starts a little less than 90 and the convertible starts a little less than 100. So my only real issue with the BMW 8 Series is, it's an extremely luxurious and sporty German coupe or convertible. That means it's going up against the, kind of the elephant in the German premium sports coupe or convertible room, and that is the Porsche 911. I don't think, a lot of people probably wouldn't cross shop those vehicles necessarily. The BMW is kind of like more of a grand tour, or the 911 is more a traditional sports car. But if you were to offer me the keys to either one of them and, tell me to take the car and go out and have fun, I'm taking the 911 keys. The 911 is not a traditional grand tourer like the 8 Series is, but there's nothing wrong with, taking a 911 out for a leisurely drive. And the, a 911 starts around $100,000 also. And if you're looking at, 140, 150, you have to know what you want. And I have looked at sales numbers on the 8 Series, and they're not great. And I think that's kind of like the reflection of the fact that these things are really expensive, and there's some great competition out there.
I think that's a good take. I think I tend to like this style of car, if you will. I didn't drive this one, but I also feel like if you're going to spend that kind of money for this sort of level of sportiness, as well as like the balance of practicality, what you're going to drive, what you're going to use it for, what's going to be the most fun. Like, I'm with you, 911 all the way. It's not even really close. To me, this car is very compelling in its own right, but probably wouldn't be how I would spend my money in this segment, if you will. I think it's pretty good looking too.
Oh, it's beautiful. And that's the thing about BMW right now is there's like a crazy wide styling gap in their lineup. They've got everything from just super sleek, beautiful looking cars like the 8 Series that we're talking about, and I would say the Z4 is also beautiful. Just a sleek, well designed all the way around, doesn't have a bad angle. And then you get the 4 Series with the crazy grille, and the M3 and M4, which are just like way out there with this in-your-face snout. Everybody has their own opinion, but most of the opinions I see are negative on that. So it's just kind of funny that you can walk into one automaker's showroom and see such restrained, classically pretty cars next to way out there, complete unrestraint in the styling department. So, but yeah, getting back to the 8 Series, it's very pretty.
Cool.
One other thing. The one that I had, you can do some really fun things with BMW's paint and color trim options. We actually, I think a week ago, and we're today's March 9th that we're recording this. Something like a week ago, we got a hold of BMW's online customizer for their special paints and interiors, and just had an absolute blast with it. My test M850xi or M850 X-Drive, whatever, had a pretty interesting interior. It was kind of like an orangey shade of brown, kind of like a malt brown, and coupled with cream. It was definitely striking. I don't think that it's a color, color palette that I would choose myself, but I think it's awesome that BMW gives their buyers so much leeway to configure vehicles the way that they want them. I think it's absolutely great in a sea of bland paint colors and 10 shades of gray that BMW gives such cool shades both outside and inside the car.
Cool. Yeah, and I agree. I think there are some very creative like palette options at BMW right now, and they're taking some risks with their design, as I think some of the cars with the grills indicate. So, I think aesthetically they're doing some very, like I said, interesting things.
Yeah, interesting is a nice way to put it.
Diplomatic. It can be diplomatic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I could diplomatically talk about this Tiguan I drove last week. It was nice. It was fine. I will admit I drove it like literally 2 miles. I just kind of want to touch on more like the idea of the Tiguan versus any sort of real like serious review here. But I spent the week in the ID4. Check out the review. I put that up. We're recording this on a Tuesday. Just went up this morning, so check that out. I had another Volkswagen at the same time, but I didn't obviously get to drive it nearly as much. But it did remind me that the Tiguan is a very, I think, competitive vehicle in this segment. It's interesting. It's different. I think it espouses some of the really good parts of Volkswagen. That's sort of like almost like thinking person's premium vehicle, but it's not really a premium vehicle, if you will. But you could get some nice things on it. But it's almost academic, if you will. I don't know. It in some ways, I think, and I did write this in my ID4 review. When Volkswagen's right, they are kind of like this like wonky, like semi-sophisticated brand, that's also totally mainstream. Like you obviously benchmark VW against Chevy, Ford, Hyundai, Toyota, everybody, but not everybody has a Volkswagen. So I think there is a little bit of an air of like, oh, interesting. Why did you buy that Volkswagen? Sort of feel. And I got that from this crossover. It stood out, that's for sure. It was a little wilder than I normally see from Volkswagens. I had the 2.0 SE R-Line Black with all-wheel drive, 4Motion is what I'm struggling with. 2-liter engine, inline 4, pretty torquey, 221 pound-feet of torque. Excellent visibility. That's one thing that I got to give VW credit for that you don't see. Like it's been a while since I've been through some of Ford's lineups, but I remember the Escape and some of the other vehicles had, blockier A-pillars than you might think, and like some of these smaller crossovers. You could really see out of this thing well. I like reminded me almost like of like old school like Forester or vehicles like that, very much a greenhouse kind of effect. Pretty nice interior. I think I said this on the podcast last week when we were talking about the Buick Envision. Like, you don't have to win in every segment, but you definitely have to be there if you want to be an automaker with some, obviously, credibility and volume and critical mass. And Volkswagen's there. They're doing a good job, I think. Again, like I said, I didn't drive this very much. I got takeout, but I liked it. Again, it's an interesting drive experience. It handles well. The steering is pretty good. Kind of a big steering wheel that's light, but it's the right feel for this segment of crossover. So, that's my kind of mini review of the Tiguan.
Yeah. So you said, so first of all, I want to say that we were talking about styling a little bit ago. I really like VW's current styling.
Yeah.
They're kicking out handsome cars right now. I actually like their crossover design right now. The Tiguan, the Atlas Cross Sport, and the Atlas, they're all kind of broad-shouldered, and they've got like the wide grille, big kind of blocky, chunky lights, and I think it's really attractive. Muted, but it's not going to age poorly. I feel like in 10 years you're going to look at the 2021 Tiguan and still say, yeah, that's a good looking car. It's an attractive car. You said you had the SER line black, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep. That means it had just like painted wheels, if you will, and some trim, things like that. Nothing too wild, but kind of cool, a little bit different than, just the normal base trim Tiguan.
Right. Yeah. So I think if I'm understanding VW's model hierarchy correctly, the R-Line Black did not have the digital cockpit, like the fully digital gate. Okay.
No.
That I think kind of stands out that gives like Volkswagen something that feels like trickle down technology from Audi, because the premium brands have been doing these digital cockpits for a while now, and it started with Audi, and now it's kind of moved down the line. If you stepped up one trim level in the Tiguan to the SEL from the SER line black, but yeah, if you step up to the SEL, you lose the black kind of blacked out wheels and grille. And for slightly more traditional, but you get some more bits. It's just about a $2,000 increase. You get the bigger touchscreen navigation, remote start, and the VW digital cockpit, which I think is worth the $2,000 increase. That digital cockpit is, to me, kind of a game changer. It just elevates the interior, like the cockpit and how you feel about your car to a point where it's worth spending the money to get.
It's funny you say that, because when I actually got into it and it was dark, it was late, I was going to get some food, I was actually refreshed just to have those like very familiar like tachometer, speedometer. I like the Volkswagen layout traditional. It's the same one that you've probably been in all sorts of Volkswagens for the last 5 years at least. I agree with you. It's definitely an upscale play. It's more sophisticated. It's more interesting. I don't know if they use the same architecture as like some of the Audi vehicles do to power like the back end of it, but I mean it's smart for Volkswagen to do that. And I do think some of the VW models have started to really like get close to Audi, maybe closer than Audi might even want them to get, as far as just how nice they could look and premium they can feel.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know. This had the base dash, and I kind of liked it, to be perfectly honest.
No, there's something refreshing about seeing gauges these days, and I think part of that is because a lot of car companies are going digital just for the sake of going digital, and they're basically replicating gauges with LCD screens, and that I don't get. The VW digital cockpit, and I don't know for sure that it's the same as the Audi one, but it's got a similar look and feel, and it allows you to do things like put the entire navigation screen directly in front of the driver, and there's a lot of other cool little things that you can do with it, but I don't know, it's really techy to me, and I agree with you that it's refreshing to just see traditional round gauges in an era where they're kind of going away. But for me personally, I really like this, at least Volkswagen's implementation of the digital dash.
All right. So I think we could leave it there. That is the Tiguan, the Tiger Iguana. I always forget how to pronounce the name of this car too. You hear it all sorts of different ways. But yeah, that I totally forgot. It's like what, a combination of tiger and iguana? Like
that's right. Yeah, tiger and iguana. Does that mean you say Tiguan or no? I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, I guess theoretically it would be Tiguan, but it could be Tiguan. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We've said it all sorts of different ways, probably in this podcast, but
well, I think that's a sign that it's not a great name.
That's for sure.
Even people who work in the automotive industry and see it written and spelled out and even type it out over and over and over again, there's still questions in how you actually properly say it.
I actually think if they called it the Tiger Iguana, I mean, can you imagine that? I mean, I'd want to drive that car. It's time to take the Tiger Iguana to go get some takeout.
I think you should be in marketing.
There we go. Let's run through some news here. No Peugeot for the U.S. We saw that earlier this week. We'll just kind of run through some of these. What do you think? Do you good, bad, don't care?
I think it's fine. Like on one hand is like a car guy getting some new vehicles in the United States is always intriguing and sounds like, hey, yeah, that'd be fun. But Stellantis, nay FCA, already has a lot of brands that they're trying to figure out what to do with. The last time that I was on the podcast a couple weeks ago, we talked about Chrysler and what are they going to do with Chrysler? And when you're already wondering how you're going to deal with the brands that you currently have, maybe it's not the best idea to bring in another one. You can kind of spread the resources that it would take to certify those different vehicles and give the love to some of your other brands like rebuilding Chrysler and firming up Alfa Romeo's lineup. That's probably a better use of their resources.
Agreed. Same. I think Peugeot could offer something interesting to American consumers. Like, I'm a big fan of micro brands. I like watches. So like my Instagram feed is filled with like random watch company you never heard of that is charging you all this money, and they like made up their own history that isn't true, but it looks cool. So I feel like there could be some appetite for Peugeot. Like maybe you want a French car, it's different. Maybe you sell like one of them. Like I could see that. But I also like relaunch Peugeot in the United States. No way, man. Makes no sense. Like 2, 3, 4 cars, absolutely not. One, maybe. I could have gotten on board with that because I'm always a fan of more choice is better when it comes to the car market. But, yeah.
It's kind of like before they brought Alfa Romeo back with a sedan and crossover. They really launched it back in the States with a very special 8C.
Yep.
And it was very limited. And it was like, if you're going to relaunch a brand in the United States, you can build up some enthusiast equity by making something really pretty and really cool and really exclusive, capture some headlines and, just sell them out of, whatever dealerships that you've already got in your, I don't know, were they Ferrari dealerships? Is that where people were buying 8Cs from probably?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So the thing, we mentioned dealerships, the other piece of this puzzle is where are they going to sell Peugeot if they did decide to bring it. They've had a hard enough time really saturating Fiat and Alfa Romeo and Maserati, like putting enough franchises out there that it doesn't feel like too big of a trek for people who don't live in, a big metro city to add those vehicles onto their shopping list. It wouldn't be any easier with Peugeot. So all around, I mean, they've been talking about bringing it back. It's not like, we as industry analysts have been telling them that you need to bring Peugeot back to the United States. They were talking about it. And I think they have arrived in the correct decision to just let it lie.
I think from a Peugeot decision, maybe you would like to at least take a small scale crack at the US and see what you could do, but I wouldn't lose any sleep over it. On the other hand, from a Stellantis decision, yeah, again, no way. You got to figure out who you are and what you're going to be and where you're going to be. And just relaunching this French brand that, frankly, no one has any equity in here wouldn't be a good bet. It would be kind of a, it's like throwing a 70-yard pass on first down when you just for no reason. Like, I wouldn't do that. So,
and what equity they do have, I think, is at least...
It's not good, yeah.
It's not great, yeah. Like, more people remember Peugeot poorly in the United States than remember them favorably.
So it's like having
So
your kicker try to throw a 7-yard pass on first down. Yeah,
how far can we push this analogy?
right.
Yeah, that's probably far enough.
How about Harley as a CPO program? You're kind of a motorcycle guy. Could get them younger consumers, maybe. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, well, this is an interesting one. If a motorcycle company is going to launch a certified pre-owned program, Harley-Davidson is the one that immediately springs to mind. They have tried unsuccessfully over the years to introduce lighter, smaller, cheaper bikes, which is kind of the antithesis to what Harley-Davidson stands for. The traditional Harley-Davidson is a big thumping, twin-cylinder engine, a lot of chrome, laid-back riding position. They've tried over and over and over to launch, sportier vehicle or sportier motorcycles, and smaller, lightweight entry-level motorcycles, and each one, they've never had a sales success. So abandoning that idea and bringing in, lightly used, what is it, less than 25,000 miles, I think is what the, and let's be honest, a lot of people buy Harleys and, just put a couple thousand miles on them in a year, just cruising around their, local downtown or back streets or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that means there's a steady supply of relatively recent low mile examples available that Harley can take in on trade-in or, pick up and refurbish and get themselves, get it re-warrantied and back into their showrooms. So I don't really see a downside to it. I'm kind of curious to see how it plays out in like the vehicles that they decide to go with. Like, we're just assuming that they're going to, kind of extend further into the entry level market space. But it's also possible they get a hold of some of their high end bikes again, and then position it in their a salesperson could position in their dealership that you could get this entry level brand new Softail, or for the same price you could get this 2-year-old decked out model with the Springer fork and with the cut down fender and with the wider wheels, or with a better leather saddle or whatever. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that play either. I think it's likely that Harley-Davidson management is thinking exactly what we're thinking, and they can get some younger entry-level riders in by offering them, lower priced, entry-level Sportsters and Softails and Dynas or whatever. But it's all going to be up to the dealerships to see how they play with it. It wouldn't surprise me if they, just tried to upsell some of the people coming into some of their more expensive, higher profit margin bikes. But yeah, I'm interested to see how it plays out.
I think Harley is at an interesting point in their history. Just with transportation sort of at this inflection point, motorcycles, I think, are the next logical frontier that's going to be impacted by changing consumer behaviors. In some ways, I think the pandemic could have helped the motorcycle business because maybe there's less commuting, but there's more joyriding, and that's where motorcycles could come in. It could make them more accessible. It might just be more of a, you kind of are getting at there, that more of just a ploy, if you will, to get people in than upsell. We'll see. I mean, Harley is, they're an old company. We don't really get into their business model too much on the podcast or on the site, but it's definitely, it caught my attention. I agree with your take.
I think the thing that we didn't mention is that Harley-Davidson sales are down big, 40% since 2014 and 60% since 2008. 2008 they sold 206,000 motorcycles, and they're not gonna recover that kind of sales volume. And every time they branch down into a lower market segment to get younger riders, they cut their profit margins. And if you've ever walked into a big Harley-Davidson showroom, you know that those things are expensive to run. They've got 50 bikes on the showroom floor. It's a lot of overhead. So they need profit margins to maintain that business model. And I think they're going to find more profit margin reconditioning and reselling certified pre-owned motorcycles with some level of warranty at a premium versus to what you just find in your local cycle trader or at, local classifieds. So if it helps them boost their profit levels, I don't see a downside to it. I think that's it's just a smart move.
I think they certainly do have obviously the corner on just motorcycles with attitude, with gravitas. You certainly know one when you see it on the road. So I mean, I think they're doing a good job of trying to get, again, just get new people thinking of them, which I think you have to do in this era, if you will, with everybody rethinking how they're approaching, their fun rides and, how they're actually using transportation, from a practical perspective. But what do you think of this Jeep, Easter Jeep Safari? I've never been to the Easter Jeep Safari. Have you actually in your long journalism career?
I've been twice.
Okay.
Yeah, it's such a cool, fun event. There's nothing like seeing Jeeps in their natural habitat, actually being used by people who want to off-road them. We're used to seeing Grand Cherokees and Renegades and Wranglers in our parking lots and driving around our suburban neighborhoods with the tops down and all that kind of stuff. But people want to buy Jeeps because of the off-road capability, and even if they're never going to use it, they want to know that it's capable of doing it. And so events like the Easter Jeep Safari are really important to Jeep to maintain that image, that unstoppable off-road image. And that's why they keep going. That's why they have a factory-backed operation that goes there every year. And that's why they keep making these cool concepts for a couple of reasons. One, to back up the image, as I was just saying, but also two, to develop their own aftermarket product catalog. Jeep makes a huge number of bits and pieces that you can add on to its vehicles to make them unique, to make them stand out from the Jeep that's parked in your neighbor's driveway, and also to make them more capable. And they develop those parts, introduce kind of concept-y versions of them, really far outgoing concepts for the Easter Jeep Safari, like the ones that they teased today. And they end up turning those into bits and pieces and parts that you can buy and replicate similar ideas on your own Jeeps.
Yeah, I think I've never been to the Easter Jeep Safari. This one, again, we mentioned we think it's going to be part of the 4xe, electric Jeep sort of system that they're going to roll out. I think it'd be really cool. I think I'm honestly, it's been kind of a weird year already. I think seeing some more Jeep Safari concepts is just a good thing. They usually do a really good job with them. So, this is just the first one. I'm sure we'll talk about more of these.
Yeah, and remember, Jeep has already said on their Way Forward website that they are going to take a electric vehicle, electric Wrangler, to the Easter Jeep Safari. So, it's possible that the Magneto is based on the 4xe, like a variant of the 4xe. It's also possible that the Magneto is their fully electric one that a couple podcasts ago we talked about. We talked about how they're basically taking a Wrangler, ripping out the gasoline guts and filling it up with batteries and motors. That could be this too. And let's be honest, they're not going to just bring one vehicle. They always, they bring 4, 5, 6 different concepts. So we'll see which one Magneto is. Is it a 4xe based vehicle or Wrangler? Is it the fully electric Wrangler? I think they'll it wouldn't surprise me if they had a 4xe and a fully electric one on display that they're showing off and running on the trails down there.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I know you're a Jeep guy. Can't see what they do. Can't wait to see what they do next. Hyundai Kia engine fire recalls. This is a big one. This is a lot of cars. It kind of, to me, dents the image that that we've seen them build up in recent years, sort of overcoming some of these like quality issues that dogged them in the past. Why don't you take us through it?
Yeah, so just this morning of the day of recording, a new recall was announced. This one is right around 380,000 vehicles in the United States. It is 2017 through 2001 Sportages and 2017 to 2019 Cadenzas that are not equipped with smart cruise control. So apparently vehicles equipped with smart cruise control have a different electrical junction box or something that isn't affected by this, at least that they're saying yet. So first of all, if you happen to have one of those Sportages, you're much more likely to have a Sportage than a Cadenza. But if you've got a Sportage or a Cadenza that's covered by this, PSA, don't park it in a garage. Kia is specifically saying, due to the risk of fire, park the vehicle outdoors, which is a scary thought. If you have this car, like, okay, there's a possibility it's going to not just, I'm not just going to lose my car in this fire if it does catch on fire, but I could burn my garage down or even my house or my neighbors or something like that's kind of a big deal. So they're saying park them outside, but that's just the latest round. So we ran the article today, and I'm just going to read this sentence. Engine failure and fire problems with Hyundais and Kias have affected more than 6 million vehicles since 2015, according to documents from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. 6 million vehicles that have a problem where either the engine completely fails or can catch on fire. That is not a small thing. And remember, too, that Hyundai Kia was fined, was it last year? I think last year, for working or moving too slowly on getting their recalls announced and moving. So, when it's not a good look to have vehicles with engines that are completely, dying, which is the kind of thing that leaves you stranded, or could potentially catch on fire. And also, it's we're not here suggesting that that each one of these is a ticking time bomb that's going to go up in flames. That's not the case. In this latest one of 380,000, I think that they're saying of those vehicles, they actually don't even know of any that have caught fire. But in as of 2019, according to NHTSA, there had been complaints of more than 3,100 total fires, 103 injuries, and 1 death. So it's not a small thing. This has been an ongoing problem, and it's all the way up into the 2021 model year in the Sportage. So basically, they've worked so hard to make gains in quality and customer perception, and they've done a really good job. J.D. Powers had them ranked really highly, sometimes even at the very top. Kia has been at the very top in owner satisfaction in several different surveys. Magazines like Consumer Reports recommend a lot of Hyundai and Kia models, and now Genesis models too, which is Hyundai's premium brand. But that kind of perception is going to take a hit if they cannot get this resolved.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. This is a sticky one. Just the sheer scale of it. I was kind of surprised when I was actually digging into it, just how many vehicles are affected. But yeah, check that story out. It's on our site for all the details. If you own one of these vehicles, definitely check it out and get it fixed.
Mm-hmm.
How we talk about a used car spotlight, if you will. This is the Infiniti G35. This is We're trying to feature, if you will, on the site, kind of highlight old used cars, ones that we find interesting. Do check this out. Jeremy had a nice history of the G35, which I remember back when I was kind of really cutting my teeth in this business. I remember driving a little bit later of a version of this car, actually, probably around '08 or '09, but it was very competitive back in the day. It was interesting. This was a time when I think Infiniti actually was really aggressive in trying some things. They would later, I think, get even riskier with some of those big V8s and the really aggressive styling that they had there for a while, and maybe the early 2010s. But you kind of highlighted the G35 as we look in the rearview mirror. How come?
Well, first of all, the average price of a new car in the United States has crested $40,000. That is a huge amount of money, and there's a lot of people listening to this that love cars and either can't afford to spend $40,000 on a new one, or can afford to spend $40,000 on a new one, have one, but also need a second car. You might have a minivan or a crossover for daily driving duties, but you might need two cars. You might have two people that are commuting to work, or what have you. So there's a lot. In the United States, 17 million new cars are sold every year. So there's a huge supply of used vehicles that are still good options for people. And so, we're going through our site and picking out various vehicles that over the last, say, 20 years, have made a positive impression and can still make a good option for a car buyer. And the first one that we went with, published today, was the 2005 and 2006 Infiniti G35. This is at the tail end of the first generation of the G. We picked it out because it's it was extremely solid entry. It kind of was shocking how competitive it was, considering this was Infiniti's, which is, for all intents and purposes, Nissan. It was their first stab at a BMW 3 Series competitor, and they really hit the nail on the head with it. It was fully competitive with BMW, Audi, Mercedes-Benz. It maybe wasn't quite as refined in some ways, but in other ways superior. It had more power, was a little bit quicker, and it's got a stellar reliability history too. That VQ engine is one of the best V6s that has been sold in the United States in the last couple decades. So you put all those things together, and considering that you can get a very nice one for less than $10,000, and you've got yourself the makings of a fun little car, either for your second vehicle, or if you're just not in a position to be spending a huge amount of money of your paycheck on a brand new vehicle. Well, there's some fun used cars. You don't have to feel like driving is a penalty when there's good used vehicles out for the taking.
That's a really good point. If you're willing to sort of do a little bit of research, I'd encourage you to check out our listings on Autoblog. We've got plenty of used car ones. You could dive back a few years and get something that, like I said, is interesting. This is definitely a vehicle, definitely a car that was fun when it was new. It still is holding up pretty well. It's a little old, but that means you can get a good deal on it. It could be a car you drive for a few more years, have some fun with it. My memory of this is the manual transmission was quite good in this era. It was in some ways ahead of its time. The way it was very responsive. I really liked it. Thinking back, the steering in these cars was very good. It's interesting because when you think, what's an enthusiast or an interesting car, or maybe your commute's not even that far, you could daily drive this thing,
Oh, totally.
So, I think that's a lot of times. I think people think used cars, they think either real penalty boxes, things they're just gonna use, or maybe you're trying to like only go a few years back and get like essentially a new car. It's like a
Right.
17 or 18 model year. But you could go back a little bit into the catalog, if you will, and get some really cool stuff, interesting stuff that maybe the demand isn't even super high for it, and you can have some fun with it. Like this to me would be a very enjoyable car to drive, especially with the stick shift.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you'll be able to find one that's probably, in better shape than like a Miata that's, been kind of, beat on for 17 years of that vintage. That's a car that would have some miles on it. A car like this, maybe not so much, and
Yeah. Yeah, and I
yeah.
think it's a good point to consider too. If you're listening to this, you're probably an automotive enthusiast. And traditionally, when it comes time to buy a used vehicle, you set your budget and you start hitting the dealership lots near you. And there's nothing wrong with that. You go see what's there, and if you find just what you're looking for, then great. But we live in different times now, and I don't know how many classified listings are on Autoblog, but I mean it's thousands, it's tens of thousands, and our classifieds are really good too. Like you narrow it down by how far you're willing to drive, and if you're only willing to look in a 20 or 50 mile radius of your zip code, okay. But if you expand that a little bit in the modern day and age with the internet, you could do a 200-mile radius, if you're willing to spend a day getting just the right car. And you'll find a lot more that's available than you would in more traditional means of, scanning classifieds, Facebook Marketplace or whatever. So if your idea of getting a used car sounds more like, okay, let me pick the car that I want and then find it, that's what this is for, as opposed to, I need to get a used car, I've got this much to spend, let me see what I can get. There's the I need it, I'm going to fill a need, or there's an I want this, and I'm going to look for it. This is more for the person who identifies what they want and is willing to go find it.
Should we spend some money since we're talking about used car listings?
Let's spend some money.
All right. This week's letter comes from Jacob, writing to us from, looks like Ohio, so not too far from you there,
That's right.
Jeremy. It's a great letter, if you will. I'm going to try to condense it. So basically looking for, well, I'll go through here. We've got current vehicles: a 2004 350Z, 2012 Chevy Silverado, and a 1969 Chevy Camaro project car. 350Z Coupe has a manual transmission. Camaro is about 50% done. 50% of it is in storage bins. It's got a small block V8 and a 4-speed manual. That's awesome. 350Z is the summer daily driver. Silverado is what's probably being used right now in the winter, and obviously for hauling anything smaller or larger than a few bags. Basically, he's owned the 350Z for 14 years now, loves it, but looking for a change. Wants to upgrade to a more modern vehicle, similar driving excitement. Okay. Says the ride height, or the ride character could be a little harsh, especially on the pothole-filled roads of Northeast Ohio, probably similar to Southeast Michigan. Open to rear or all-wheel drive suggestions. Typically purchased vehicles that are around 2 years old, have less than 25,000 miles on them. Budget is about 30 grand, but finding the right car is more important than the price. He has test driven the Stinger, Mustang GT, Alfa Romeo Giulia, MX-5 Miata, of course, and the 4 Series Grand Coupe. He said the Mustang GT was his favorite, which makes sense. And he's also eyeing the Mustang Bullitt, but has not been able to find one close enough to drive or in that price range. So great letter, Jacob. Thanks for writing. I hope I did it justice. I tried to get through the highlights. So yeah, how should we spend his money? Should he wait for the Mustang Bullitt, or go for one of these, or something off the dance card here? What do you think, Jeremy?
Well, first of all, Jacob, you sound like a really cool guy.
Yeah.
I like your taste in cars. '69 Camaro, nothing wrong with that. I've had plenty of cars in my own garage that have been in various states of being built. So I feel you on half of it being in boxes and bags and ziplocked. So keep going with that. That sounds great. You're going to enjoy that Camaro. The 350Z is a lot of fun. We actually talked about the G35 just a little bit ago. The G35 that we talked about, the Infiniti, is actually built on the same FM platform that the 350Z that you drive is built on. Obviously, it's shortened, two-door, no back seat in the 350Z, but the basic guts, including the VQ 3.5-liter V6, are very closely related. And it's a great car. It is harsh. I actually looked at a 350Z, just like the one that you drive, when they were brand new, and I ended up getting a Mazda RX-8. It was a little bit more practical as a daily driver with the suicide doors in the back seat. I would not recommend you get an RX-8, even though it was the right choice for me at the time. We're looking at a used vehicle, and sounds like you've moved up a class, and you're not wanting to get something with 100,000 miles on it that could potentially leave you stranded. So not making that recommendation, but I'm real happy to see this letter. I got my wheels kind of turning a little bit. If I was looking at around $30,000 for a fun, sporty car, I would first look, I just happen to like them. I would first look at a Challenger, Dodge Challenger. I did a little bit of internet sleuthing, and I found if you extend your budget to maybe 35, you could actually get a Challenger 392 Scat Pack Shaker, which is just a really fun car. I love the 392 Hemi. It's a rumbler, a tire spinner, just an absolute blast to drive. And I love the shaker hood. When you get into it with your foot, you're going to see the shaker hood rumbling like the old Trans Ams. Such a cool car. If that's not quite sporty enough for you, that's too muscly. I really like the BMW M240i. You said you drove a 4 Series Grand Coupe. The M240i to me is a little bit harder edged and a little bit closer in idea to the 350Z, but a little bit more practical. A little roomier and whatnot. You're almost into Cadillac ATS-V range, but not quite. You're almost into Jaguar F-Type S range. With the V8, a little bit, a few years older than you were looking at. But if you extend your budget a little bit, those are potential options too. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with the Mustang Bullitt. And if that's the one that just pegs everything for you, it's an excellent choice.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think my thought is I don't have a crystal ball, so it's kind of hard to tell for me what Bullitt prices are going to do. Like, if you want the car now, find the best Mustang GT you could get and roll with it, being mindful that car is going to be a little harsh on the Midwest roads, especially this time of year. I'm always intrigued by the Alfa Romeo Giulia. I think it's an interesting car. It's compelling. It's fun to drive. It handles brilliantly. It's a great looking car. That one to me is just a very visceral option. To me, that's kind of hot or cold. You're either going to drive it and be like, this is what I want, or you're going to be like, I don't know. And that kind of answers your question there. 392, I feel like I actually recommended a Charger 392 on last week's podcast. Get one a couple years old. I think that actually would fit your price range because, even new, they're like 43. So used, couple year old, you're paying for the big rumbly V8. That sounds good. Probably get down into the low 30s for that. I would go Charger over Challenger. Again, I always do kind of go back to the Mustang GT as being among the best here. The Stinger is actually an interesting choice too. I will say this, it's yes, it's sporty. Yes, it's powerful. Yes, it looks good, but it is still a sedan. So you might want to maybe, stick with the Mustang, or if you're thinking four doors, the Giulia is a sedan, but it's a very sporty sedan, in my opinion, even more so than the Stinger. So I think I'd probably land on like a Mustang GT, or I would hold out for the Bullet if that's like the right blend of like the suspension tuning and it gets you the Mustang. That could be the option you go with. Or again, like a 392 Charger. Those things I do think would probably cushion the bumps of Northeast Ohio a lot better than some of these other options.
Yeah. I would go Charger too myself because
Okay.
I personally would rather have the four doors, and it's still a really fun car on a back road. But I wonder if you're replacing a 350Z, which is like a real sports car.
Right.
I wonder if the Charger would just be a little bit too big and not quite as tossable as what you're used to. I don't know. Test drive one and see. They're everywhere, so you shouldn't have a problem test driving one. The Challenger is a little bit more tossable than a Charger, but still not like a 350Z is. I mean, if the Bullet is the one that you really got your heart set on, and you're going to keep the car for 5-10 years, I don't know if you can afford it. I don't see the downside really, except the added money. But you did say in your email that finding the right car is more important than hitting that $30,000 price. So if it's the right car, I feel like you've already found it. But if you're looking for other suggestions and options, the Charger, Challenger, and like I said earlier, the M240i falls into your price range too. It's a fun little BMW. It's very sporty, and it's got that great turbocharged inline six that feels way more powerful than it's rated at. So I wouldn't overlook that one.
It's a good choice too. Jacob, I think we've actually probably maybe muddied the waters a little bit, but we do both agree that, if the Mustang Bullet is what you want, it's probably worth holding out for. But, a few other things on there, sort of depending on like, how concerned you are about sort of like the driving, characteristics of it is. Maybe I'm sort of over indexing on like, the roads are tough and you want something that might be a little more compliant. Because again, a Mustang GT can be a pretty harsh car, but it's also an awesome car for enthusiasts. So I guess if you have a 350Z, you kind of know what you're getting into in this area anyway.
Yeah, those are pretty crash bang over bumps and potholes. It was one of the reasons why I got the RX-8 instead of the Z back in 2005.
That's saying something when you're like, the RX-8, that's the car I want to be a little more comfortable here. But
yeah, it's true. The Z is stiff. It's stiff. I mean, you get great handling out of it, but man, it bangs over bumps.
Yeah, maybe a 370Z if that's another option. Like just kind of go a little newer here. I'm sure they're available in reasonable amounts on the used car market. Could be something to consider too.
Yeah, and the Infiniti Q60, even the Red Sport 400 would probably fall into your or close to your price range. I don't know. I don't think of that vehicle as feeling as sporty as it should, or feeling as fast and powerful as it should. But I mean, it's still a really nice car that you could look at. But talk about muddying the waters. I think the one thing that Greg and I are both saying and agreeing with is if you love that if you liked the Mustang GT and you really liked the Bullet because of the shocks, it almost sounds like you've come to the right decision already.
Sounds good. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the Autoblog podcast has now achieved 2 million downloads. That's a pretty big deal. Pretty exciting. We actually think it happened last week. Over, it's a cumulative thing, so no single show puts it over. But last week's show, I guess technically did put it over. We probably would have kept getting more downloads, but it's a huge milestone. The show goal was all the way back to 2005. 5 as far as we know. Jeremy, you're the longest serving Autoblog employee, so glad we could have you on here for this as we mark this milestone. I think that's kind of cool. 2 million. It's a big number.
Happy
You've been
to
on
be
the
here.
show a lot. Yeah.
I've been on the show a lot. Yeah, I feel like if I had a kazoo and one of those like party bangers that throw the confetti everywhere, this would be the appropriate time for it, but I don't have them. So everybody, if you're listening, just pretend. Congratulations to all the Autoblog podcast.
Sounds good. All right, we'll leave it there. 2 million and counting. Send us your Spend My Monies. That's podcast@autoblog.com. He's Jeremy. I'm Greg. We'll see you next week.